Hey sketchy friends, so in today's video I just wanted to talk about urban sketches that don't use watercolour, because in urban sketching it's really common for a lot of sketches to use watercolour just because it's so convenient, it's so portable, it's such a beautiful medium to use as well, and it's really versatile. But you know, there's actually plenty of urban sketches out there that use other materials instead, which is really interesting. So I wanted to share some of those with you, just a few, just so you can get an idea for what you can use for urban sketching, which by the way actually is anything. I really hope you enjoy this video and you discover a few artists that you perhaps haven't heard of. There's probably some names there that you have heard of, and I hope it kind of helps you feel like you might want to experiment with some different materials next time you're out urban sketching, even if it's only the humble pen. So let's get into it. Before we do though, I just want to mention Pretty Sketchy TV. Please do head over there, prettysketchy.tv. I have got over 100 different videos on different techniques, different styles of urban and travel sketching, and I'm starting to release workshops as well. So there's definitely some exciting developments over there. You do get a free trial, so do go and take a look when you get a moment. That would be great. And yeah, let's get on with the rest of the video. Okay, so first of all, I'll talk about sketches that use markers. This is the work of Don Collier. I've been a big fan of Don's work since I even discovered what urban sketching was all of those years ago. His people sketches are amazing, and he does it all with Faber-Castell Pitt Artist pens. He's actually an ambassador for the brand as well. You can find more of his work on Instagram. And if you use or want to get into markers, then I'm sure you'll find his work very inspiring. There are a couple of videos of him sort of demoing his particular technique, so I'll link to those in the description as well. I will say I'm a really big fan of using Faber-Castell Pitt Artist pens in the shades of grey to accompany my watercolour, and I do actually mention that in a video here on YouTube, which I'll link to in the corner. But they play really nicely with watercolour because they've got India ink in them, and they just overlay really nicely because they're kind of translucent and you can build them up and stuff like that. So I'm a big fan of those, but it's really interesting to see Don's work solely with these pens and predominantly people sketching as well. It's really cool. Okay, the next person is Albert Kefir, otherwise known as House Sketcher on Instagram. I think he has become a lot more well known in the last year or so. He's got a very cool Domestica class, which you can check out. I'll put the link in the description below. So he's well known for his marker sketches of houses and buildings on Instagram. I suppose, I don't know, including Albert in this video of urban sketches could be a little controversial, as I don't think his work is 100% urban sketching by any means. I think he draws predominantly from photos, but he does certainly have some sketches that are done on location as well. But his overall style and subject matter lends itself to urban sketching, and I think it's cool for you guys to see what you can do with markers. I think his style sort of slots into the urban sketching vibe, but yeah, don't hate me for mentioning him, because I do know a lot of his work on Instagram. He does refer to the fact that he has drawn from photograph, which is obviously not urban sketching, but I do think it is very interesting to see his style anyway. And do check out his Domestica class as well, because there's some really good teaching there. I do really think his style could inspire many urban sketchers who are keen to try out markers. The next person is Phil Dean, and he's also known as Shoreditch Sketcher. So Phil's got a couple of books out as well. One's kind of focused more on drawing in terms of urban sketching, and then the other one is actually on watercolour, which I found interesting because I do believe that quite a lot of Phil's work is done using markers. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding. I have also read previously that he draws on site quite a lot, and then he'll colour his sketches later on with markers. So that could be like a convenient way to use markers if you don't want to carry them around with you when you're urban sketching. But you know, if you check out Albert's course, who I mentioned previously, on Domestika, he does explain how you can limit the amount of markers that you require, bearing in mind if you're urban sketching and you're carrying them around with you. The fact that Phil has said in the past, I don't know what his current situation is, but in the past he has said he does draw a lot on site and then will colour later. And I know that might agitate a few urban sketching purists, but I can think of quite a few other prominent sketchers who also do this as well. The ones that spring to mind are John Harrison, who I have an interview with on this channel from a couple of years ago, and also Tommy Kane as well. So in my view, it's each to their own. There's no kind of right or wrong when it comes to colouring later if that's what you want to do. Okay, moving on then to paint markers specifically. This one's a bit more challenging. There are definitely urban sketchers, myself included, that use paint markers in addition to other materials, but there's not too many people that solely use paint markers that I could find. But if you know of some, please do mention in the comments so that we can all check them out. So, I'm going to say Jenny Adam here, where I know she doesn't 100% use paint markers, but she does have a lot of sketches that feature paint markers quite heavily. So she's actually another sketcher who has a class on Domestika. It's really cool to see that Domestika do have a fair few urban sketchers teaching on their platform. It's really great. And I would say her class is more of a mixed media approach, but it definitely does include paint markers as well. And I do feel like she champions paint markers more than anyone else I could find. So yeah, do check out that Domestika class. I really enjoyed it. Her use of colour is really incredible. I love that there's just no literal colours going on with her work. It's all expressive colours. That's how I would explain it. So I think it's a super fresh approach. And yeah, really find her work quite engaging. Okay, moving on then to pencil. I'm sure there's lots of people that just sketch in pencil, but I mean, in terms of urban sketches, the one that sort of is most prominent is Eduardo Badek. Occasionally he uses other materials, but he does really stand out for his use of pencil for most of the time when it comes to his urban sketching. And, I find it interesting, while we're all busy trying to figure out what's the best brush to use and what's the best watercolour brand and what's the best paper, he's just out there with his pencil making these wonderful on-location sketches. So that's, something to think about. It does speak to the minimalist that's hiding inside my inside my soul somewhere. Eduardo has taught at quite a few of the urban sketching symposiums. He also teaches workshops all over the world, and he is an ambassador for the brand Watercolour as well. And I've just recently noticed he also has a Domestika class. It's literally just something that grabbed my attention a couple of days ago. I think it focuses more on drawing architecture, but I'll definitely link it below for those of you who might be interested in having a look at that one. Moving on to colour pencils. Again, it's a little tricky to find anyone who solely uses colour pencils for urban sketching. Again, any suggestions? Leave them in the comments below. I have used them in conjunction with other mediums, such as watercolour, and so do a lot of other urban sketchers. They kind of mix them with watercolour or gouache, that kind of thing. I use colour pencil quite a lot in my toned sketchbook, in my Stillman & Byrne Nova that I've just completed, which I have just shared a sketchbook tour video of. If you're interested in seeing that, I'll link to it in the corner below. Kaa Toova springs to mind as sort of an obvious one. Some of you may know her from Sketchbook School. I think she was a teacher on the colour pencil course there. I didn't actually take it, so I'm not 100% sure on that, but from what I can see, she was a teacher on that course. She's a freelance illustrator, and she actually does a lot of sketching on location, and she uses colour pencils very heavily in her work. I really love her style. It's super whimsical and feels like a children's book illustration style, and I'm pretty sure she does illustrate children's books, so that makes sense. So I'm pretty obsessed with the children's book illustration style, especially mixed with urban sketching from life. I think it's really cool, so do look out for a video in the near future on this subject matter. But yeah, I just love the way she captures people and she imbues them with so much character, and she just really inspires me to want to crack out my colour pencils as well. So Lynn Chapman is another person who springs to mind. She is one of the very first urban sketchers I came across all those years ago, and I love her people sketches. She also has a book on people sketching, which I highly recommend as well. She's now seems to be more heavily involved in textile art and fine art these days from the looks of her Instagram profile, but there's plenty of examples of her commuter sketches, so sketches of people on trains and buses and stuff, which I particularly love, that you can find over on Pinterest. You can check out the people sketching board on my Pinterest profile. I'll link to it below, and you'll find some of her work there as well. And she went through a phase of using Inktense pencils, which I know aren't specifically colour pencils, but I've sort of grouped them together in this category for some of her sketches, which are really interesting to see how she uses them. And you can also see some examples where she uses, the magic pencils as well, which have different colours within the same pencil point, which is quite interesting to see. So do go and check out her stuff as well. Moving on to gouache. Again, the most obvious person that springs to mind, that probably springs to all of our minds, is Maru Gordes. When I think of urban sketchers who use gouache, she is definitely the first person that springs to mind. When I discovered her and her style of sketching, it just hit me like a gale force wind of fresh air. It's so bold and colourful, and at that point, when I discovered her, I hadn't seen anything like it before, especially sort of within my urban sketching gaze. I am not trained in illustration. I've had no art education, so it's just things that I come across basically on the internet or through books over the years is kind of my own education. So certainly within the realms of urban sketching, I hadn't come across Maru's sort of style before. So, of course, when she released a Domestica class, I had to jump straight into it. She's since done 2 more classes from that one, but the gouache one is the one that I return to now and again. Not that I can actually say I've dusted off my gouache for a very long time, but I just really enjoy watching her process and her work. And I just feel like it's so liberating. Discovering Maru was definitely an aha moment for me. As someone, again, who's never studied art or illustration, it took me a really long time to appreciate different styles of sketching. And maybe that's why I love exploring style so much, because it just leads me down all of these unexpected pathways. And I've never failed to be amazed at the multitude of different ways people use materials and interpret the world around them. It just absolutely lights me up. If you haven't seen it yet, by the way, I've just released a video on urban sketching styles, different urban sketching styles. It's a very brief overview of a tiny slice of what's out there, but especially if you're new to urban sketching, I think it's a really great way to just get a taste of what's out there. So do check that out. I'll link to it in the corner here. So the next artist I want to mention is Jessica Smith. This one's a bit tenuous, if I'm honest, but I wanted to include Jessica as while she's predominantly an illustrator, she does sketch on location from time to time, and she does have a great class on Domestica called Travel Sketchbooking with Gouache. So for those of you who are interested in learning more about using gouache in this way and how to capture your travels, I do actually think it would be super valuable to check out. Link is in the description. And I think it's useful to always, check out a wide array of artists and illustrators when you're considering your own creative journey. And I'm sure most of you are interested in multiple creative pursuits outside of just urban sketching. I think it's just our nature as artists to have eclectic tastes and interests. So I have done my best to keep this list completely to urban sketches, but Jessica's a tiny bit of an outlier, but she definitely does do on-location sketching. But yeah, that kind of mixture of travel sketching and gouache, I really just wanted to include her in this list. And then moving on to our final material, which is just ink lines, just using a pen. So for any of you who have known or followed me for a little while, you know that I'm a long-time fan of James Hobs' work. It inspired me from the very moment I saw it. Again, one of the very first urban sketches I came across. I got his book, Sketch Your World. And I just thought, whoa, someone can just sketch the streets with just a sketchbook and a fat black marker. That's so cool. Again, I think minimalism has always appealed to me, even though I'm not quite there yet. It does appeal to me. So I also think when I look at James's work, it just inspires me to sketch. It makes me feel like I can do this too. And I think that's a very special quality. And it's something I also like to feel that maybe hopefully people get from seeing some of my sketches as well. The activity of sketching the world around us is such a precious one, and even more special when you can inspire others to pick up a sketchbook as well. James has just released a new book through Gabby Campanario's publishing label, Sketcher Press. Is that what you call it? Like record label, publishing label? I don't know. You know what I mean. So I really want to get my hands on that book. I think it is a collection of James's on-location sketches from over the years. So it looks really cool. So do check that out. I'll try and find a link and stick that down below as well. The next urban sketcher I want to mention is Noel Okello. I actually discovered Noel's work in the book The World of Urban Sketching by Stephanie Bauer. His sketches with ballpoint pen, as you can see on the screen, are amazing. They're just so clean and precise. And perhaps this is due to Noel's profession as an architect. So it's just amazing to see what someone can do with the humble Bic biro that we probably all have hundreds of lying around the house. You also don't hear too much about urban sketches on the African continent, so it is good to see incredible sketches and poetry as well, which he does include on his sketches, from a sketcher in Nairobi, Kenya. If you have Stephanie's book, you can find Noel on page 71. And then the next person I want to mention is Zanab Tambola. Again, also discovered from Stephanie's book. Seriously, if you don't have that book, please do grab a copy. It is sumptuous. That is the only word for it. And if you can't get enough, then do also grab the first installment from 10 years before that by Gabby Campanario as well. Those two books are just, I just love them so much. They're my two favourite books. So Zanab is based in Mumbai, India, and she is an illustrator and a teacher. She's got mad skills with the black brush pen, and she does definitely use other materials too. In fact, her Instagram feed is filled with gorgeous, colourful sketches, so please do check it out. But her sketches with just the black brush pen, which I think was inspired by the Inktober challenge, but I might not be correct about that. But the sketches with the black brush pen and just using the white of the page are just incredible. And it's just so inspiring to see what someone can do and someone can capture with just one tool. So when people ask what they need to get to start urban sketching, this is the answer: something to draw with, something to draw on. That is it. So thanks very much for watching this video, guys. Don't forget to check out my book, The Beginner's Guide to Urban Sketching, and please do come and join me for more sketchy fun over on prettysketchy.tv.